Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's nice to look out across the row of everyone and see a few familiar faces. I'm the senior curator at MAM, and I know many of you from the work that I did at the Montana Museum of Art and Culture at the University of Montana. And before that, I was lucky enough to work at the Speed Art Museum in Louisville, Kentucky, and also the Akron Art Museum in Akron, Ohio, as they were undergoing a big renovation and build out. And then I started working in the museum field at the Holter Museum of Art in Helena, Montana. Has anybody ever been to Helena at the Holter before? I really enjoy that museum, and it's got a great relationship with the Archie Bray Foundation. Mostly I'm testing my audio to see if I can see everybody. It looks like I'm lagging a little bit, but I can tell you're following along. If you end up having difficulties hearing me, let me know, but I'm glad it's working. I came to talk to you about what curators do and what the Missoula Art Museum does. I've been at the Missoula Art Museum since 2015. I had worked at the University of Montana since 2009, and that was the year after our children were born, and I had a homing instinct. I was born in Bozeman, and I felt I really need to get back to Montana and raise these kids in Montana. And so they were 6 months old when we got to Montana, and I was so grateful for the job at the university. Steve Gluckert, who was the longtime curator at the Missoula Art Museum, ended up leaving in 2015, retiring, and I applied for the job and slid across town. Now, I'm sure you all know what curators do, since the term has invaded popular culture so much, but you might not know it originally comes from the Latin curare, or to care. And mostly curators care about objects and how they're presented. That element of care is implicit in what curators do. It began with collections, caring for a collection, and then it expanded to selecting objects and making sure that the objects were presented in the appropriate way in relationship to each other, and also creating different contexts around an object. And so it's been an interesting profession. I went to school for painting and drawing, and not originally to get into the museum field. And it was only after working at the Holter for about 6 years that I realized, wow, if I'm going to do this as a profession, I should go back to school so I can make more money. So I went to the University of Louisville in Kentucky, and they had a very strange program called a Master's in Curatorial and Critical Studies. And I focused on that rather than museum studies because I wanted to think about honing my critical thinking skills and my writing skills a little bit. In practice, I knew that was those were the areas that I really wanted to strengthen. And so it was a really interesting program. And just after that, I moved back to Montana and started at MMAC. Typically, curators balance artists with a knowledge of particular institutional spaces and a familiarity with museum collections. Usually, I describe the work that I do as working as a hostage negotiator of sorts, and you're always mediating between competing interests of the public, the institution, and the artist. You're always thinking about what the audience needs, what the artist needs, and what the institution needs. But really, it's a great job. And after those 5 years at MAM, I've really come to admire the core values of that institution. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the core values. And I brought a slideshow, which I'll now attempt to transition to. And we'll see if you can all follow along. Did we make the transition okay? Good, that's great to hear. So I did it as a PDF, so it's a little smaller, so it might be a little glitchy, but let me know. Since 1998, MAM has had a special relationship with Jean Quick-to-See Smith, who comes from the Flathead Reservation just north of Missoula. And you can see that Jean speaking with her son, Neil Ambrose Smith, and my director, Laura Millen, there in the center. Jean is one of the foremost artists in the country today, and it's really interesting to see how her work has been collected by major institutions. You wouldn't guess it, but she's in her 80s. She's an amazing painter, and her career is just taking off now more than ever. We did a survey with her way back in 1998, and it was organized by the Newark Museum in New Jersey. And at the time of that survey, we had been showing some contemporary Native artists intermittently. But when we did the survey with Jean, she said, you really need to start a collection of contemporary Native artists. And what I'll do is I will give MAM a copy of every work on paper that I create, any print, anything like that, and I'll give a copy to MAM. So now we have over 44 pieces by Jean, including some paintings. And she really describes this as the time that she put a stake in the ground and helped that. That really was a great challenge to the Missoula Art Museum, and it helped us collect other contemporary Native artists. These are some past projects that we've done. Our vision is to bring artists together with the audience, and we love to put art and artists first. We support art at its source with commissions and residencies. And in this case, Ryan Feddersen is related to the clan, the Feddersen clan. Great number of artists from Omak, Washington. Ryan lives in Tacoma. And MAM has the responsibility of caring for the Paxson murals in the courthouse. And we asked Ryan to reinterpret those Paxson murals, and she did so with heat sensitive paint. And so you can see she's here demonstrating this piece where she holds up her hand and touches the black paint, and in doing so reveals things that are hidden. And she was talking a little bit about indigenous histories and indigenous knowledge that's maybe not seen when you first look at the mural work. We like to celebrate our diverse community through the eyes of artists, and in doing so, we really invite a lot of different perspectives. We like to think of ourselves as story keepers of a visual narrative. And we really try to create community, and in all of our work, we think of it as education work, and we try to increase the capacity for wonder, respect, and understanding. Our motto, if you haven't heard of it, is free admission, free expression. And being a free museum is really great, but we think that free expression and free speech is really fundamental to a democratic ethic. I think of museums much like I do as libraries, these civic spaces that belong to the public, and we view free admission as a mandate for accessibility and invite a largely rural, economically challenged population into the museum. We've tried to make it a radical welcome recently, and that's kind of a buzzword, but it means that we go out of our way to for outreach and bringing populations in, funding a lot of busing, doing a lot of digital outreach increasingly, and so it's been a really a shift in our thinking over the past couple years. When we think about these democratic values, we think of freedom of expression, freedom of thought, intellectual inquiry, and cultural expression really as the foundation. And we try to develop exhibitions that are representative of these principles in action. We're working to expand this to include free education so that all of our educational programs are free. And we're trying to put together a diverse portfolio of funding from grants and foundations to do that. You can see that we do a lot of work with kids. Here's David Spear and kids from the Two Eagle River High School. They're photographers, and David, before the pandemic, was in the habit of bringing them down. Many of these kids come from a diverse tribal background and have never been in a museum before. David's really challenged them to document themselves and their community, and it's really great to see how they've done that. You can see this is some of the work that they've done. We did a small exhibition called Res Made, Photographs from Two Eagle River, and it traveled to New York City, and they did an exchange with some of the best photographic institutions in the country there. I'm gonna scroll down to this. This is a gallery. We bring in outside curators from time to time because I don't have a tribal background. I'm just a plain old white male. And so to get the diversity of viewpoints, oftentimes we'll invite guest curators to come in and work on different projects. And this one was curated by Wendy Red Star, called Our Side. And here you see the gallery. And this gallery, as part of our commitment to the best contemporary art in the region, we have this gallery dedicated to showing contemporary Native art perpetually. And so every exhibit that's in this gallery, it's called the Frost Gallery, always shows something from a contemporary Native artist. We feel like this is important since we sit on the traditional ancestral lands of the Salish and Upper Kalispel people, and we're adjacent to reservations. And here we are right in the heart of Indian country. So we really feel like we have this special viewpoint that we can use to share. And we're being recognized for this nationally. And I think that that's really a blessing and an honor. We've gotten some important grants from the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Arts in excess of $100,000. I know in science terms, that's not very much money, but in art terms, that's a really big distribution, and it allows us to do our work unimpeded. Last year, we also got a research grant, which is unusual in the museum world, from the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. And that allows us just to investigate the possibility of doing an exhibition devoted to the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. This gallery has been in existence for more than a dozen years, and the collection has grown. And so now we have a collection. Our collection is very small, especially compared to the university's collection. Montana Museum of Art and Culture boasts that they have over 11,000 objects. MAM only has about 2,500, and of that, only about 10% are this contemporary Native collection. But it's the most active part of our collection, and we get requests for loans all the time. We send pieces out across the country, and it's the most photographed part of the collection. We also talk about not being neutral. You know, sometimes people talked about museums being neutral. Here's Wendy Red Star giving her talk. As part of this Our Side project, we also had a dance performance by a young woman with Cherokee background, Elisa Harkins, and she's been reviving the Cherokee language and incorporating that into her performances. You can see down at the base here, that's me sitting here with my daughter and my son. I don't know if you can pick us out of the crowd, but going back to that idea that museums aren't neutral, we really think that programming decisions at museums have really historically reflected deep, long-standing social inequities. And we recognize that the whole art system, art history, the art market, the press, even the way museum display happens, really gives preference to a single viewpoint. And it's typically been Western and white and male to the exclusion of other viewpoints. And so we really try to figure out ways to counteract these narratives and this viewpoint in a way that gets rid of exclusion and that silencing. We really try to work hard to build education programs and interpretation that talk about contemporary art. And by contemporary art, I just mean art that's being made now. In all of its complexity and diversity, we really try to do that. I'm pausing on this slide because you can see here the shape of things. These were 4 artists from across the country: Molly Murphy Adams, John Hitchcock, Sarah Seastream, and Dwayne Slick, really from the 4 corners of the country, who came to the University of Montana and worked at the Matrix Press. We have a partnership with the School of Art, and they came and were in residence for a week and created the work for the exhibition. And then we gathered that work and collected it into the permanent collection and mounted an exhibition. And it was really an exploration of different ideas surrounding abstraction. These gatherings, and here you can see I'm in conversation with Dwayne, John, Sarah, and Molly. Molly was the only person who grew up in Missoula, but she finds herself in conversation with these different Indigenous artists across the country. And we talk a little bit about the idea, even though MAM's focus, the exhibition focus, is on mostly art from the Northwest, Montana artists, the Northwest. We find that a lot of the Native artists across the country have blended backgrounds, they come from a lot of different tribal communities. They might live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but grew up in Missoula, Montana. And they're facing a lot of the same challenges about representation and inclusion. And so we look at this idea of a global indigeneity and think about how those issues affect artists across the country and invite them in. Here they are at Matrix Press creating their pieces that entered into the collection. Those guys at the university knock their socks off. It's with a bunch of student printers. They focus for a week and they just work hard. I think John Hitchcock on the right, he did something like, I think in a week's time, he made over 150 prints, which is just, you think about how quickly he's pulling prints off the press, and it's an incredible rate of speed. It gives us access to greater relationships. And so as we did this project with Molly Murphy Adams, and she was the gal pictured on the left here, creating this dry point with on copper, we realized we didn't have a really great representative piece in the collection. And so we looked at her work and asked her if we could buy this piece. She sent it for the exhibition as an example of work that she does. It's a basket, and it's called Anog Ite. And you notice that it has the computerized QR codes on the side that are beaded in. And as you use your smartphone, here you can see Molly demonstrating with her smartphone, that it brings you to stories about Anna Ite, who is the person responsible for bringing decoration and embellishment and embroidery to the Oglala Lakota people. And it tells the story of Anna Ite as you move around those 8 panels and use your telephone. So things like that, I think, are really exciting. It's a very traditional art form, but she's interpreting it in a way that's very much a part of the present. This is another way that we've partnered with the University of Montana. This is an exhibition that's curated by Nicole Garner, and she was a graduate student focused on art history. And she used MAM's collection and made a selection of different artists. And here, her work that she selected is up at Salish Kootenai College. This is the fine arts department here. That's me walking down the hallway, doing a final inspection on the installation to make sure that it's hung correctly and all the labels are good and the information's correct. And she interviewed each of those artists that were in the exhibition and tried to get a statement about the piece that she selected. This exhibition, it was very small. You can see it's not very many pieces, but it ended up traveling across Montana to 9 different venues across the state. Many of these institutions have never done an exhibition of contemporary Native art. And so that felt like a real celebration. A few of them even brought Nicole as a speaker and invited her to come and see the installation. Corky Claremont has been an important, he's Salish, and he's been an important cultural advisor up on the Flathead Reservation and in Missoula. We've done several exhibitions with him, but here he's talking about his tar sands double-headed arrow. It's really a protest exhibition about the Fort McMurray and the Alberta tar sands. And we rely on cultural advisors to guide us in our work so that we're making the right connections, asking the right questions, making invitations in the right way. And some things are really interesting. The Flathead Reservation isn't just Salish and Kootenai. It incorporates lots of different tribes, tribal members with Nez Perce backgrounds or Blackfeet backgrounds. This is an exhibition of a young Blackfeet man, Stephen Hunt, The Land That Feeds Us. And you can see here's Stephen with some of the students that he got to know at SKC. He grew up moving in between reservations and went to school at SKC with David Spear. And his exhibition of contemporary res life really resonated. I'm going to show you another exhibition. I'm going to end with an exhibition of Jay Labor, and he's also Blackfeet, but found that the Flathead Reservation was his home. This is a Northern Cheyenne artist named Bentley Spang, and this is a series of television monitors in the shape of a war shirt that you can see. And war shirts were traditionally used for protection, and not only for battle, but other things too. But you would take some of your hair and you would send it with that person. And so that the tassels that you can see hanging down from the arms of the shirt, you carry your family with you, your friends with you, your ancestors. And Bentley did a piece about water found on the Northern Cheyenne, which is a pretty dry spot. This is the site of a spring. All these monitors were synced together and showed a single image. And this was commissioned by Mountain Time Arts, which is a group out of Bozeman doing really ambitious projects. It was only shown in a small schoolhouse for 2 weeks, and then it disappeared. Here's John Cowlesbeak on the right and Bentley putting this monster together. And you can see what an IT nightmare that is, with all those cords and cables looping back and forth, trying to get all those monitors to play at the same time. It was just a really wonderful opportunity. Bentley also did a piece about watching his grandparents' home burn up on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation as part of a forest fire in 2012. And then he came back at the tail end of the exhibition and did a performance. He often has a trickster character that he incorporates. Rick Bartow is from Oregon, and this was the focus of our 5th grade art experience last year. The 5th grade art experience is where every single 5th grader from Missoula County comes through the museum, sees an exhibition, talks about what they see, and then does a hands-on art project. And we've got such a wonderful group of docents that help lead those kids through and unpack what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. This was a very successful exhibition. Rick was a Vietnam vet, suffered PTSD, had substance abuse issues, and really used art as a way to self-regulate, I think, is a good way. You can see here he's in uniform, sitting in a wheelchair, playing guitar in a very expressionistic way.